All right, here we are today with James. Nice to speak to you in English today, James. doesn't
Yes,
happen,
nice to speak
doesn't,
to you in English.
doesn't happen that often for us, actually.
That's true. That's very true.
James, you came into my classes mostly doing kind of advanced Latin. Tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so I'm a data scientist. I have a day job, and I started studying Latin as a hobby maybe 5 years ago. Uh, hopefully we've talked about
There's
this
quite a
before,
few
Seamus. So
data
hopefully,
scientists, let me say.
so, Seamus hopefully will forgive me for calling myself an autodidact here. But I read, I'm mostly just reading textbooks and doing things. Uh, Before, like in my late 20s, I taught myself Danish, and in my early 30s, I taught myself Spanish, and I really enjoyed it. And I just kind of naively assumed that I would use the same approach to teaching myself Latin that I used to teach Danish and Spanish. I didn't realize at the time that that's a politically controversial idea, but it turns out to be. I've been, from the very beginning, I was looking around for podcasts and, chat groups and so forth. And I went on Twitter just to find more opportunities to read Latin, and that's where I first met or first discovered Seamus is on Latin. And I'm a hobbyist. I'm not a teacher. I'm not in grad school. I'm not trying to get a graduate degree in classics or anything. I'm just doing this because I wanted to read. I wanted to read the Aeneid in the original, but I've
Which I
kind
hear
of
you've just finished. Is that true?
yeah, I recently finished, but it feels to me like that Woody Allen joke. I took a speed reading course and I read War and Peace in 15 minutes. I think it's about Russia. Yeah, I understood more than that. I understood, I freaking understood half of what I read. But at some point, it was just me, let's just go through it, and then I'll read it again some other time, and I'll understand more. And so what I understood, I liked
Yeah.
in
Okay.
general. Yes.
Well, I've read many books in my life, but I've read one particular book about poetry, and it wasn't just about poetry, but it was particularly about analyzing poetry, French poetry in particular. And something that was in the book stuck in my head, and that's anything worth reading, anything worth reading once ought to be worth reading twice, because it's only when you read it twice that you can appreciate it as a whole. Only when you understand the whole can you begin to understand the parts.
Yeah.
So things that can only be read
Yeah.
once, they're kind of trash. Like if they're
Yeah.
like,
Suspense novels or whatever. But like there's some movies, like, yeah, even some mystery movies or whatever, that you actually enjoy watching twice, even when you know how it ends.
yeah,
And like you said, that's a test of a really good movie. So yeah, so I guess that, yeah, so I mean, yeah, I'm a older hobbyist student, so maybe there's some people out there that are in the same situation as me, or maybe you live in a city where there's not a lot of spoken Latin opportunities, and so you're kind of studying on your own, and it's nice to find community. And so that's one of the things that I think eventually drew me here. I mean, before I came here, I did do one. I mean, well, first I started listening to podcasts. I didn't try speaking until a good year after I was listening to podcasts. So I just felt like that made more sense. Like until I actually felt like I could speak, I didn't think it made sense for me to eavesdrop on other people's conversations when there are podcasts that I can listen to.
to be fair, I got a lot from listening to podcasts, and I've heard quite a few people say that's one of the things that pushed them along, even more than being in live
Yeah.
conversation. Being able to listen to podcasts really helped them.
And in that sense, I was lucky because I think I first found the Quomodo Diki Tour podcast at episode 10. So, I think that they were talking about a Star Wars movie, and I don't remember which Star Wars movie it was anymore, but it was it was new at that time, whenever that was.
Yeah.
So
what was the thing that tipped you over the line to come to classes with me?
yeah, so I had done one. I mean, so I was starting, like I said, wanting to have some sort of community. I had tried. I mean, I started going to some of the online speaking groups, and I still go regularly to a few, and I like it. I've made some great friends there. But sometimes I wanted to, like, when you want to read something or talk about what you read, and it's not always easy. Like we even in those groups, we will sometimes organize, like, well, let's read this together, and first finding something that everyone's willing to read, and then getting everyone together, and then sometimes the mix of levels is a little too extreme, and so the discussion feels like it gets bogged down for some people, or goes over the head for others. And I was usually one of the more advanced students in those efforts, and so I would get a little bit bored and frustrated.
Yeah.
So after doing that, and then the pandemic hit, and I was suddenly working from home, which is not as relevant for you, but I signed up I did a class with Daniel Gallagher through the Paideia Institute, and that was a 7 a.m. class on like Monday or Tuesday mornings, I forget. But it was like I didn't have to drive to work anymore. I could get away with doing that. I felt like, and I liked it. I mean, I liked that class, and then I just figured I'd keep doing that.
Yeah.
But the classes I saw for the next term at Paideia didn't quite, and so I started looking around, and I think whatever it was that you offered. I mean, the times of your classes work really well for me because I'm not a morning person, and Australia to America works great for night owls. I think at least in America.
It's worked out really well for me.
Yeah.
I mean, not all my students are in America, but it works out well that quite a few are, because it matches my work day. It means I don't need to run classes at night, generally speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a win-win, I think. And so that's one of the things that I've liked about this so far, is that usually it doesn't really disrupt my work schedule or my sleep schedule to attend your classes. And then and I think whatever it was you were reading, the first class I signed up for looked interesting to me. I think it was one of the medieval.
Boethius?
Huh?
Was it Boethius?
That might have been. It sounds like it. I mean, that certainly sounds like the kind of thing that I would say, oh yeah, that sounds cool. But I don't remember. Was that the first one? Do you remember? Did you?
I don't remember.
I didn't check my records before this interview, so but yeah. And then I just kind of stuck with it. And like I said, for me, it's almost like I'm paying you to do all the unpleasant work of organizing a book club in Latin. I hope you don't mind me saying it that way.
That's fine.
I get to join a group of people that know Latin pretty well. That are nice, fun people, and we talk in Latin, and we read something cool, interesting in Latin, and so I have a day job, so I can afford to, and so this just like I said, it's a nice win-win.
Yeah, I think. Well, to be honest, at the upper levels, the more advanced groups, it often feels like that, because I know that yourself and both the Latin and some of the Greek, the more advanced Greek, that there are people in my class who know at least as much as I do. Sometimes, maybe not more in general, maybe not more speaking, but sometimes possibly. I don't think of it as a competition either. But I know that there are people there who know their Greek or know their Latin incredibly well. Definitely know things about Latin that I don't know. Sometimes they've read more of the main text than I have. In some of the classes, that's true, because I know that people are reading the stuff that we don't read in class in their own time, like yourself. And
I've tried that a few times and made myself miserable, but yeah.
Yeah, so it is a bit like it's a book club, but it's a very enjoyable book club that's not replicated in many places.
Yeah. So that's what I like, and I guess, so I mean that it's nice just to, as I'm, of course it helps, just reading regularly, and I like being introduced to new things to read. I was really enjoyed the unit we just did on Augustine. That sermon was. He's a really nice writer. It's really it's just fun and easy to follow what he's saying.
Yeah.
And there's all these phrases like, "Ooh, I have to use that." I got to find a way to use that sometime in conversation.
Yeah. Sorry. I was just gonna, if someone was thinking of coming to classes with me, what's your word of advice, or what can they expect? What can they expect? I think that's often the question for people. They're not quite sure what to expect coming in.
Well, so we read things together. Usually we read it, so we'll take turns reading parts of it out loud, and then discussing what it means, not necessarily diagramming sentences unless one of us is really confused about something. And but most of the time we just this is what it means. We try to and so it gives you good practice in like trying to find a way to say what you just read different from what like that paraphrasing. Because I mean, if you just say the exact same thing, how do we know you understood anything, right? How do I know I understood anything if I can only say it in the exact same words it was said to me? So And so that's generally the pattern of these things. And then, you know, if we, when there's a certain passage that I guess catches enough interest, we may discuss more deeply on that particular passage, you know, or, you know, if, like there's a line that we really like, maybe we'll talk about it. And
Yep. Excellent.
so yeah, I mean, the Latin prose composition class, that was intense. That
Yes.
it was fun, but it was intense for me. And I guess you're kind of, we were your guinea pigs, but it was fun to be a guinea pig.
Yeah, for that class, that was definitely an experiment, because I'd done something similar in Greek that had gone really well, but with a smaller group. I didn't know how the Latin one would go. I still feel kind of self-conscious about running prose composition classes at all. But in one sense, it's a chat, like it's just it's part of,
I feel like it could eventually be just like a writers group, just like
Right.
the book club and a
Right.
writers group, you know.
right.
My
I
thought.
think that's what I was aiming for, and that's what I want those courses to kind of aim
But
towards.
I realized that my writing fluency is a lot lower than my spoken fluency
Mhm.
when I took that class,
Yes.
because I don't do much writing. I listen a lot, I speak a lot, you know, so I've gotten comfortable speaking. Obviously I still make a lot of mistakes when I speak, but you know, and some of which I catch as soon as they come out of my mouth, and others I guess I don't.
And this is one reason that, you know, that I often feel like the big correction to make. I'm often like, well, look, most people realize they've made a mistake in that split second after they've said it.
Yeah.
You don't need to tell them; their brain's already
Yeah.
telling them.
Exactly. Like, yeah. So yeah, like for me, I think in general, like in grad school when I had a lot of friends from other countries, I would wait until I heard them make the same mistake a couple times before I would try to point it out.
Yeah.
But some of them would say, "Yeah, correct me," and then you're like, "Trust me, you don't want me to correct you every time I hear you make a mistake. You just got to trust me on that." You know, I will be judicious. I will try to choose good moments to, you know, because you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
But yeah. So I liked the writing class a lot, and I mean, it was intense, and so it compared, you know, like some of these reading classes, I can just do a little bit of reading, and it's really as a you know, someone who has a day job, it's very easy and pleasant to keep up with the work. Most of the time, the writing class, because I wasn't quite there yet, I was putting it was a little stressful for me finding the time to get everything done.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think
obviously,
going forward,
like you said, you offer courses for lots of different levels, and so
I think what's needed actually is a writing class for both languages. A writing class that's a step down, that says you probably haven't done much writing, maybe you never tried to write anything at all. Here are the things that will get you into writing.
Yeah.
I think that's what's needed. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's
And
my
I
thoughts.
guess you had suggested one of the, like in the pre-interview, I guess we'll call it, you asked about like how I felt like this has helped me. It's hard for me to come up with anything concrete. I have noticed that I have, even though I felt for a good portion of the past couple of years that I was stagnating, I do remember at some point during the pandemic reading one of Cicero's speeches and just being surprised how much easier it was then than it had been when I tried to read Cicero, you know, 2 years earlier or whatever. And so I have noticed, you know, it's for me, I'm at a point now where you're that kind of hard, where you've gotten past what the beginning books can get you to, but you're still not quite at the point where it's super easy to read the actual, you know, ancient authors.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, yeah.
People talk about a long intermediate plateau.
Yeah.
And it's a long plateau. And you just need to I think you just need to kind of embrace it and stick with it.
Yeah.
But there are, you know, you do find these kind of subjective kind of moments where you realize, oh, this, yeah, like you said, you know, this text that I read previously, now I come back to it, now it's a lot easier. You know, benchmarking yourself in that way, or even just picking up something new and finding just noticing the ease with which things, it's a real, I mean, as you know, the pleasure or the joy that you have in that moment when you pick up something and read it without difficulty is a difficult to replicate joy. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Exactly.
I know some Latin.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for sharing some of your thoughts and experiences, and look forward to having you in our next round of classes starting soon.
All right. Thank you.